AITA for revealing my cousin has an illegitimate child nobody knew about. At a family dinner this weekend, my daughter, 17, announced that she had been accepted into one of the best colleges on our side of the country. We are all very proud, but attending means moving many hours away, and she is questioning if that is something she wants as our family is really close and many of her friends are attending a local university in our city. My cousin, 37 male, began making subtle jabs about her attending such a great school, muttering things like of course her mom would push her to go, she has to be the best, and then the next minute to my husband you know she doesn't have to pretend it is because of family. If you can't afford it, college isn't for everybody. To say my husband and I were blindsided by his behavior. I have always had a great relationship with my cousin. His fiance, 34 female, was mortified and kept quietly telling him to shut up and would apologize for his behavior, claiming he was stressed with work. This went on for almost 3 hours, getting louder the more he drank. After dinner I tries to pull him into the kitchen and asked what the hell is going on. Not only was he being an ass to me, he completely ruined his niece's announcement. His response, you act like you are parent of the freaking year. What, because your kid got into college? Nobody gives a shit. Get off your high horse already. In a moment of pure rage I got in his face and responded with, well, at least I will see my oldest off to college. Do you ever know where yours is? He just stared at me as if he was going kill me. My husband rushed in and told me everyone could hear us. In my moment of rage, I revealed to not only his fiance, but our entire family, that he had a child. I'm the only one who knew this as it was a relative to one of my friends in college. The girl moved back with her family to her homestead. I occasionally see pictures of her kid, 16 male, on her Facebook, but have never asked him about it, and honestly assume he didn't know anybody knew. He was going through a bad party phase in college and nobody blamed the girl for leaving. That being said, he absolutely could look her up and see his son in 10 seconds. His fiance kept asking what kid and he began yelling at her, my husband and myself. She grabbed her things and their 5-year-old and left. The evening ended with everyone yelling at him and storming out. His fiance called me the next evening to tell me that at this point the wedding is off and she is staying with a friend for a while. I apologized profusely, but she said it wasn't the child, everything involving the situation, that made her see him differently now. The whole family is livid with my cousin for hiding this. I know I was wrong to let it slip out. It was 100% a moment of anger on my part, but I also don't feel that I owe him an apology after everything, especially how he talked to my daughter. NTA. I'd almost say AITA, just for sitting on this information for as long as you did, when the fiancé didn't know and had a child with him. But he brought everything on himself. NTA, in my opinion, the fiancé needed to know this. Their lives are already intertwined forever, and while she shouldn't have heard it from you, she needed to hear it. Taking your own bullshit out on a teenager is pure fuckery. AITA for telling my daughter she needs to stay with her mom. I, 35 male, have 2 kids, 14 female and 11 male, with my ex-wife Sadie. We have no formal custody agreement, because we have always parented well together. We got divorced when Bella, 14 female, was 7 and my son Brock was 4. I stayed single for a long time, and didn't really bring anyone around my kids. So I recently started dating again. Alyssa has her 11-year-old son that plays on the same basketball team as Brock. I didn't really see the need to say anything to Sadie because she didn't allow me to have a say with her love life. I didn't like one of her last BFS and she told me too bad. My son and her son really love it. My daughter and Alyssa got along very well. So I have no problem with Sadie hanging at my house with the kids. If she has nothing going on and wants to see our kids, I'm cool with her coming over, and she will spend the night sometimes in my guest room. So she stopped over about 2 months ago, and Alyssa was there. I was in the other room, but I heard some yelling. Then Sadie barges into my office, almost in full tears, screaming at me about Alyssa. I could hardly even make out what she was saying. I called her once she left to get the full story. Basically Alyssa was Sadie's childhood bully. Alyssa was a year older and picked on Sadie growing up. Sadie demanded I break up with her because she didn't want Alyssa around her kids. I said that wouldn't be happening. So talk to Alyssa about everything. She said that she hardly even remembered my ex-wife, but that she remembers them being friends growing up, then having a falling out, then they didn't like each other. She said it was mutual dislike and not bullying. I decided to call my ex and tell her that she needed to let me know if she was stopping by going forward, and that the sleepovers probably needed to cease as well. She flipped out saying she couldn't believe I would choose her bully over her. I told her that this happened 20 years ago and she needed to get over it. So now my daughter started disrespecting Alyssa out of nowhere. She went from friendly to mean in literally a month. I suspect Sadie told her something. I came home to find Alyssa crying in our room. I asked Bella what happened and she said some nasty stuff about Alyssa and that was it. I asked my son what happened and he told me that Bella was being mean to Alyssa. Bella threatened to get her mom involved. Bella also went off on Alyssa's son. So I told Bella she needed to go to her mom's to stay for a little. This has been a pattern now for weeks. Now my ex is blowing up my phone calling me a shit dad, saying I'm picking a bully over his own family. I said I'm not. That it's time for me to start dating again. And everyone needs to be accepting of that. That only my ex had a problem at first, but now my daughter does because of her. And that it's time for both of them to grow up. And that Bella needs to apologize for her behavior. AITA? I'm going to go with AITA. Here's why. You seem to have had a good relationship with your ex-wife. You didn't mention she had problems with the truth. You also didn't mention that she was jealous of your relationships and tried to sabotage them. Your ex-wife seems to have a much clearer memory of what happened than Alyssa. It's strange that for someone who doesn't really remember Sadie, Alyssa definitely remembers she was not at fault. At the very least, it seems Sadie is convinced that Alyssa bullied her when they were young. Of course, your daughter would be upset by this situation, especially when it sounds like you accepted Alyssa's memory of events over your ex-wife's. People grow up, and they stop bullying behavior. Hopefully, Alyssa is not a bully now. But, it sounds like you accepted her version of events. That's got to be hard for both Sadie and Bella to take. There's a certain irony in your not tolerating Bella's being mean to Alyssa when that's the childhood behavior you choose to overlook in Alyssa. You chose a girlfriend over your daughter, knowing why your daughter doesn't like her. NTA. Your ex is creating a hostile environment where you're being forced to choose a side. Unless there's evidence that Alyssa is still behaving like a bully in the present day, the fact that she was a bully 20 years ago should not influence the present to this extent. I agree with a lot of others here that you also shouldn't wreck your relationship with your daughter over this, but I believe that letting Bella continue to behave this way is also not acceptable. Alyssa, of course, also needs to handle friction with your daughter better. Also, it's just very unhealthy for your ex to rope your daughter into this. Except for the kids. You for turning away your daughter instead of sitting with her and talking it out like an adult. She's 14. She can handle it. Your ex-wife for alienating your daughter against your girlfriend instead of just explaining to her calmly about the situation neutrally. Again, she's 14. She can handle it. Your girlfriend for downplaying the situation. I might get downvoted for this, but if your wife got this angry seeing Alyssa again after 20 years, I suspect that there was more going on than just a simple, mutual falling out. AITA for not congratulating my brother and sister-in-law on their baby after she stole my name. For a while, before I got married, we talked about baby names. We came up with Sienna for a girl and were set on it. We have a specific last name. Backstory: my brother-in-law was set to get married July 2020, COVID hit and they pushed a year till July 2021. I got engaged in October 2020 and set our date for October 2021. It was a whole ordeal that we were getting married in the same year. Fast forward to my rehearsal dinner. My sister-in-law is pregnant, due in 3 months. We sat down and I asked her if they decided on a name. They wanted to settle on an Irish Catholic name. Her top 2 were Lily and Jeremy. I then brought up how specific our now shared last name was and that we had a few favorites. I said boys' names are so hard, but for a girl I love Sienna. It just has a ring to it and goes so well. I repeated the first and last name a few times, swooning. We continued to chat for about 20 minutes about names and favorites. The conversation ended Right before the due date we visited them. They hadn't told us a name, we assumed it was a secret. Didn't come up as we toured the nursery. A week later I look in our family text, my whole body started shaking. I was in shock, pure disbelief. The name they picked was not the T she told me, it was Sienna. How can you forget that conversation? Why didn't she say anything? Was this why the name was a secret? I later found out everyone but us knew about the name. Even an aunt to knit a stocking. The obvious first thought was she took the name and didn't give a shit about how I felt. It was just too much of a coincidence. I remembered how they treated us when we wanted to have our wedding. It seemed kinda on brand for them. Randomly settling on that name didn't make sense. So over the next month I didn't say anything in the group text. I was still so hurt as to why she would do that. I forgot about it for the most part and life went on. We decided it was best not to say anything to them and the right time would come. Well, a month later it did. My brother-in-law asked my husband to be the godfather and he decided to bring it up. I wasn't part of that conversation, but things seemed to have gotten pretty heated. Her excuse was the name was on her list and it was a name her sister decided not to use. And she didn't remember our 20-minute conversation 3 months prior. That excuse to me seems weak considering everything but beyond the point. Their response was, we are extremely upset that I hadn't texted congratulating them on the birth of their firstborn and were hurt I would think she would steal the name. They ended with, we should take a break from seeing each other, which is rich because we live thousands of miles away. Somehow I went from being the one who was wrong to the bad guy and I feel like I have whiplash. AITA for not texting congratulations to my brother and sister-in-law. Or was I justified? Info: did you specifically say I will name my child Sienna? Or did you gush about the name to a pregnant mom who was still thinking of names and could have interpreted the entire conversation as you convincing her how wonderful the name would be? Because from your description it sounds much like it could be interpreted either way. Lots of people suggested names to me when I was pregnant and many went on telling me how great it would sound and how much they loved the name. My kid wouldn't have a name if I removed every name from the list of ones people loved. I said it in the context of this is what we want to name a girl, not I like this name with our last name. But good point, I think that is part of the problem. NTA. She's a jealous predator and has successfully displaced you as was her intention. You are giving her exactly what she wants. She set you up and you took the bait. Look up reactive abuse and blame shifting. The people that chose her are like her and won't change. If you want to use this as a permanent insulation break, go for it. Unless your husband loves his family and this is hurting him. Turn this around. Make it clear that she is lying by omission and her absolute silence to you and not others makes that obvious. Let them all know you forgive her actions and understand why she did what she did. Then discuss it no further with anyone, and if they insist, ask why they want to stir up family trouble when you have moved on. You know who she is now and can't be trusted as you once thought. Don't talk about future baby names with other people because this can and does happen more often than you think. Be the bigger person and congratulate them on their baby. Are you sure she actually understood you were talking about you using the name? Because from her perspective she was talking about possibilities for her child and you started harping on how amazing a particular name was, especially with the last name. So when did it become a conversation about your hypothetical kid when it was clearly originally about her child? Her takeaway from that conversation was possibly just that Sienna was a great name. It sounds like you did too good a sales pitch on how awesome your preferred name was and nothing else could be as good. And doing that when the conversation wasn't about you and then blaming her for name theft does kind of make it a